Hello everyone and welcome back to day 2 of my beginning card making series, just an introduction to the different supplies and what they are used for. Today I'm going to be talking all about different types of stamps and ink. So, to get started, I'm going to be talking about photopolymer stamps, which are probably the most popular type of stamps that are on the market. Many different companies use the photopolymer stamps, and I'm sure that you see them on Instagram, Facebook, blogs, everywhere. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what they are and how you use them, but these 5 are kind of my top 5 that I would suggest for beginning card makers, just different companies that I like. So I'll go ahead and start with the W+9 Unforgettable stamp set. This has different elephants, a balloon, and some really great sentiments. This is a birthday stamp set, and a lot of the stamps that I'm going to show you have to do with birthdays, just because it's the types of cards that I make the most, so, and I think are kind of typically what people make the most of, just because everybody has a birthday once a year, so you always need birthday cards. These are really great to color. If you are beginning, if you're a beginner, you can color in the elephants or the balloon. It's good practice with those. So this is a really great stamp set. They're simple images as well. Next up is the Lawn Fawn Critters on the Savannah. This is an older stamp set, but it's one that I've used so many times, and I just think it's great to use different techniques with it. The reason I really like Lawn Fawn is because the lines of their stamps are thicker, so if you're a beginner and you're practicing coloring, this is a little bit easier because it's more forgiving. You don't really go outside of the lines so much. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these stamps, but the lines are just a little bit thinner. So if you are practicing coloring, these are a little bit easier to do, I personally think. But I really like this stamp set because it has these cute images. You can use them for adults or children, and it also has really great sentiments like hi there, thanks, birthday, just many different occasions. And you can also mix and match, so you could use this image with a sentiment from a different stamp set as well. So that is Critters on the Savannah by Lawn Fawn. Another one from Lawn Fawn is Jessie's ABCs, and I just think that having a birthday or alphabet stamp set is really useful. You can use this to create your own sentiments or to personalize cards. You could write somebody's name on there if you wanted. And I really like that it has both upper and lowercase, and there's multiple ones of the lowercase, so you don't have to keep going back and trying to line them up and leave spaces for like a vowel or something. These are also really nice because the stamp is a square, so they're really easy to line up on your stamp block and make sure that they're all even. So this is Jessie's ABCs. My 4th stamp set is from the Alleyway Stamps. This is Big Chatter. I really like these big sentiments. They kind of take up the whole card, but in a good way. It's a really good focal point, and you can add these little icons and stuff all around it or use it with different stamps. So it's just a really great stamp set to have, and it has really basic sentiments like hello, congrats, and thanks that you could use for many different occasions. And the last one is from Simon Says Stamp. This is called Birthday Messages. And like I said, I make tons of birthday cards, and this just has some really great sentiments that can be used for anybody. So it says, happy birthday to the most amazing, spectacular, and fantastic person I know. May your day be as special as you. Birthdays are awesome and so are you. This calls for cake and ice cream. And I also like that it has different sizes. So there's some really tiny ones and some really larger, bold sentiments that you can use. So photopolymer stamps are a little bit more expensive, but they're really great quality. They're a lot thicker than like acrylic stamps, and they stamp really nice crisp images. They're not splotchy or anything like that. And they last like forever. So let's see here. I'm just going to pull one of these off, and mine's a little stained. Depending on what inks you use, they might stain your stamps. That doesn't affect the quality of them at all. They're still going to stamp the same. So you just take a clear acrylic block with these photopolymer stamps. These come in many different sizes. There's round, rectangle, longer, larger, just many different types. You just want to probably pick up a couple. I suggest a smaller one and maybe a larger square one. So you take your stamp off the sheet and you just put it right on there, and then it clings. So it has a really strong hold. It's not going to come off when you stamp your different stamps. So that is just how you use these with the clear acrylic blocks. And these are really cheap, and you obviously use them over and over again. So these are the photopolymer stamps. So those are the top 5. I'm just going to mention 2 different other kinds of stamps. I don't have very many. This is actually the only wooden one I have, just because I've gotten rid of them. Because they take up a lot of space and I don't have a lot of storage space. But this is a red rubber stamp. It's attached to a wooden block. It's a background stamp, which is how a lot of these wooden ones are. I think people use those the most. This one you don't need an acrylic block or anything. You just go ahead and ink this up and stamp it down and then clean it off. I clean all of my stamps off with baby wipes. I just buy the cheap ones from Target, the off-brand, and they work really well. I should also mention that with photopolymer stamps and different inks, this Ultra Clean by Hero Arts is a really great stamp cleaner. I find that it works well with the dye inks that stain your stamps a little bit more, and I'll talk about those inks in a minute, but this is a really great cleaner for your stamps if you are looking to clean your stamps and you are looking for a way to clean them. But for everyday use, I just take a baby wipe and wipe those off. Alright, so this is a wood-mounted stamp. The other one, and this is just like the wooden one, but without the wood block. So it's a foam cling stamp. Comes like this in the package. It has this paper on the backing, so you go ahead and remove that. And then here's the foam cling part. So you don't really want to use this without like an acrylic block or anything, but you can see that it's really large, and most acrylic blocks aren't this big. So what I like to use is the Fisker stamp press. I go ahead, I have my stamp on my surface, and then just take this and press it down, and then it picks it right up so it sticks onto there. And again, it's a really good, it's adhered really good onto there. So then you can peel it off, but you can go ahead, ink that up, and then you stamp it down with this. And this is nice because it allows you to have the surface area to be able to push down on all of those little areas just to make sure that the entire stamp has stamped down. So those are the foam cling ones. And again, most of these are background stamps that you see now. Alright, so I'm going to move on to inks really quickly. I'm going to talk about the different ones, and then I'll kind of show you which ones I think are great for beginners, because there's so many different colored inks out there, and I'll just show you what I use the most and what brands or types I like. So I'm going to start out with just some basic different ink pads. This is the Tuxedo Black Memento ink. It's the one that you see me use the most in videos. It's a dye-based ink, and it is a felt pad. I use this for Copics and most of my sentiments. This is the ink that you want to use with Copic markers because it doesn't bleed. Other people do use different inks, but this is the one I personally use and recommend to everybody that colors with Copics. Some people don't think it's quite black enough. The color really doesn't bother me. I think it's a great black. But again, I like using this with Copic markers and just my different sentiments that I stamp on my card. It's just really great to use with your stamps. It doesn't stain them. Over time it will if you use the same stamp over and over again, but it's not like a true black, and it's not going to keep your stamp black. Next up is the VersaFine. This is the Onyx Black Ink. Again, another black ink, but this one is not for Copics. This is Pigment Ink. And what Pigment Ink means is that it sits on top of your paper. So it stays wet a little bit longer. You can heat emboss with that using your embossing powders. You can't do that with a dye ink because that soaks right into the paper. I like to use this with watercoloring because it is water soluble, so it doesn't bleed when you add water to it. The Memento ink is going to. It just doesn't stay that crisp line. This one works really well, and I like it a lot better than, say, StazOn, which a lot of people do use for watercoloring as well because it doesn't bleed. But I prefer this one for using with watercolors, or if I'm using like my distress inks with water. Next up is the Versamark. This is a sticky ink. This is the one you also want to use when you're heat embossing. I use this for sentiments and stuff like that if you're using colored embossing powders. It has a sponge pad and it's sticky, so when you stamp this onto your cardstock, you're not going to be able to see it. If you tilt it in the light just right, you will be able to see like a little bit of shine from it. And then it stays wet a little bit longer, so you can add your embossing powders and stuff with that. These three are kind of the basic inks that I would recommend for beginners, just because they're all used for different things, different techniques, and they're just really great inks. And I've had these for a really long time and they've lasted me quite a while. And they're ones that I've been using since I started card making. One other thing with the Versamark, I like using this with craft cardstock. So when you ink this up and then you stamp it on your craft cardstock, you can see how you can actually see the ink. If you let this dry over time, it's just a really cool technique. I like to use it on my backgrounds and stuff to create that subtle look without having to use like a darker ink, because sometimes that ink, it doesn't match quite perfectly. This is just kind of like that watermark look on your cards. Alright, so next up, this is the Hero Arts white ink. I know a lot of people like white inks, but it's hard to find one that stamps really well. I really like the Unicorn White Pigment Ink by Hero Arts. Again, it's a pigment ink, so you could heat emboss with this. It does stay wet longer, so it sits on top of your paper. You don't want to smear it or anything like that. It's going to take a little bit longer to dry, but it's a really great white color. I'll show you what it looks like on my craft cardstock. So you can see how well that shows up on different colored cardstocks or the craft cardstock. Some of them are just a really faint white color and you can barely see it. So I know that this one is a great color. Next up, I'm going to talk about the StazOn. I'm just going to mention this because some people might want to use it on different things. It says it's good for use on plastic, metal, glass, ceramic, laminated paper, coated paper, and leather. So if you are working on glossy paper, StazOn is what you're going to want to use because it's not going to smear or anything like that. Personally, I really don't like StazOn. The smell, it's a really strong odor compared to other inks, and it stains your stamps really bad. So I don't like using this on my clear stamps because I like to be able to keep my clear stamps as see-through as possible, and when you use StazOn, it just turns them black. But if you are stamping on like glossy paper, this is the ink that you're going to want to use. I'm just going to finish talking about these two pigment inks. These are like colored pigment inks that a lot of people see around. Mama Elephant has one, and there are some from Averyelle. Their inks are pigment inks as well, and Memento Luxe. Like I said, these are pigment inks. They sit on top of the paper, so you can use them for different techniques, layering on top of each other and using on colored cardstocks. You can also heat emboss with them, but they do come in many different colors. These two are the two pigment inks that I use the most. This is called Hazel from Mama Elephant and Love Letter by Memento Luxe. I just like using the brown inks for different parts of my card. I just think it's a really great neutral color. And the Love Letter I used for different holidays like Valentine's Day, Christmas, things like that. It's just a really great red. So I'll show you how these pigment inks work with my stamp. I'm going to ink this up with the red and then stamp this onto my cardstock, and you can see it's a really good crisp image. It's a really bright color. These do take longer to dry. Like I said, they sit on top of the paper, so I'm going to go ahead and rub my finger over it, and then you'll be able to see how that image bled and there is ink on my finger. So these, you don't want to like send them in the mail or anything. You don't want to rub your hand across it when you're working, so you do have to be conscious of that. It just takes longer to dry, or you could dry it with your heat tool. Next up are the dye inks. So these are from Hero Art, Simon Says Stamp, Lawn Fawn, and Ranger. Just different brands of dye inks. These soak into the paper, so you're not going to have a problem with smearing or anything like that. Basically, they're all really similar because they're all the same type of ink. These are my favorites from the different companies. I just really like this blue ink from Ranger. These two are both greens, but they're different colors, and I tend to use a lot of greens because I like to make scene cards. So I have like my grass, dirt, and then my sky, which is why I like different shades of green to use on my cards. And then I love this light yellow color from Simon Says Stamp. I've used this on several different cards. I just think it's a really great light yellow color because sometimes you don't want that bright or more orangey yellow color. So I'll show you, I'll ink up, this is the Green Hills from Hero Arts. Go ahead and stamp this on my cardstock. I don't know if you can see it, but it is a little splotchy at first. These do stamp splotchy, but they even out as they dry. So don't worry about that if it doesn't look really great at first. I can rub my finger over it and it's completely dry. I'll show you what the blue looks like stamped out. The only thing with these is that they do stain your stamps a little bit. Look at how gorgeous that blue color is. So here's my baby wipe. I'm going to go ahead and wipe this off. You can see that the stamp is still blue, but you can still see through it. So I don't mind having a little bit of color that is on my stamps. But I will show you if I go ahead and ink this up now, this yellow. You see how that's obviously like really green, it's not yellow, and it did get on my stamp pad a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move these aside. I'll go ahead and show you really quickly. This is my Ultra Clean. I'm just going to spray this on my stamp. And then I'm going to find a spot on here. So I had wiped this off with my baby wipe and it looked like all the ink was off, but I sprayed this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. Look at how all of that extra ink that it cleaned off. So, and my stamp is no longer blue. Sometimes it doesn't quite get all of the stain off, but I think that did a pretty good job. So I would highly recommend that cleaner like I said previously, and then I can go ahead and stamp this up, and that will go away after time. So and then there is the yellow. Alright, so the last ink that I'm just going to mention is the Distress inks. These are the two Broken China and Walnut Stain that I would recommend because these are the two that I use the most. Like I said, I make scene cards, so these two are kind of colors that I use for the sky and the ground. I don't stamp my sentiments or images with these. I use them mostly for techniques, so I blend them in my background, or you can watercolor with them because they do react with water. You can stamp with them, stamp with water with them, I should say, and just because I don't stamp my sentiments or anything like that. But I'm going to talk about these more in depth in the future I'm going to do like a whole series on distress inks because there's so many different techniques that you can use with them. So you just want to look forward to that. But for now I'm just going to mention that these are the colors that I like. And I'll show you how this stamps because it's not going to stamp quite like these. The edges are definitely not as crisp as the dye inks. That's why I don't use them for stamping or anything like that. You definitely can, but I just prefer using dye inks for stamping and stuff. So these are all about the inks and the stamps that I like to use and would recommend. If you have any questions about any of them, just let me know. And I will see you guys back here tomorrow with the die cutting video. So look forward to that. I'll see you here tomorrow. Bye!